computer. Okay, so good afternoon. Welcome to the Fundamentals of Startup Finance. The presentation will be given by founder of FlowCog, Adam Zagornis. I'm going to turn it over to him in 1 second. If you do not know about YBI, this event is powered by YBI's Evolve Technology Program. We are an incubating program for technology startups based only in Northeast Ohio. My name is Chandler Fiffick, and I am the director of the program. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Adam will get to your questions the last 10 minutes of the presentation. And I am going to put the Evolve application in the chat as well as my email, should anybody want to reach out to me with questions about the Evolve program directly. So with that, I will pass it over to Adam.
Great. Thanks so much, Chandler. I'm Adam. I'm a CFO and the founder of FlowCog, which is a software tool to help you understand your finances and put together projections. And you'll see a little bit later in the presentation why that's important. There's a lot of material that I want to get through for today's Lunch and Learn. So let's dive in. Okay. Can you see my screen?
It is coming. Yep.
Great. Okay. So kind of two topics that we're going to talk about today. One of them is founder equity and ownership, what that looks like when you choose to raise outside capital, and kind of what the expectations are with all of that. And then how your company's finances tie into that whole process, both before and after you raise money. And then kind of those two concepts and how they tie together is something that we'll explore using my tool FlowCog Canvas a little bit later in the presentation. So first, we're starting off with founder equity and ownership. So this concept of ownership dilution. So if you start a company, you start off owning 100% of it. And as you raise money, you start to give up a percentage of your company. So that may come in the form of a simple agreement for future equity, which we'll get to later. It may come in the form of a seed round or a Series A. Those can be called priced rounds. And so those involve a lot of kind of terminology and different aspects and factors that come into play with them. Some being liquidation preference, some being investor rights and potential board seats and everything. Today, we're going to focus mostly on the financial aspect of it. So a few terms to start us off were, when we talk about valuations for fundraising rounds, you'll hear the terms pre-money and post-money valuation. So what that means is a pre-money valuation is going to be the most up-to-date estimate of what your company is worth. So factoring in all of the quantitative and qualitative aspects of your business, how far along you are with the product, how many customers you have, how much revenue you have, that's all going to feed into some sort of calculation that the investor will do, and you'll do as well, to try to come to an agreement on what the valuation of your company is. And then they will invest money into your company based off of that valuation. So the post-money valuation is simply the pre-money valuation plus the round size that you're raising. So if you had as an example, a $9 million pre-money valuation that both you and the investor agreed on, they agreed to put $1 million into your company, your post-money valuation is $10 million. So again, pre-money valuation is the most up-to-date estimate of what your company is worth. So this will change as you raise more rounds of money, right? Your pre-money valuation is not going to be the same in Series A as it will be in Series B or Series C. Also something to note, and I found that folks got this a little bit mixed up in previous presentations I've given. The post-money valuation in a round is not necessarily going to be the pre-money valuation in the next round. And you'll see what that looks like in a second. So keep that in mind. Okay, dilution. As we discussed, you raise outside capital, you own less of the company. That's fundamentally what dilution means. It does get tricky, and I'll show you why in a second. When we're talking about raising money from investors, you're giving up a percent of your company in exchange for money, right? That's fundamentally what's going on. So this is a screenshot from the tool that I built, Flowcog Canvas. And the idea here is that it lets you enter in different parameters of your fundraising round in order to see the results and the effects of your ownership stake. So in this example, we're looking at a seed round. And before the round, you as the founder own 100% of the company. We're saying that you're going to be raising a $1.5 million seed round. So you're going to get $1.5 million into your bank account. And that is at a $5 million pre-money valuation. So what does that mean? We're saying that after the round, the post-money valuation is 6.5 million, the 1.5 plus the $5 million pre-money valuation. And what that means is that the investor now owns $1.5 million out of the $6.5 million. And so your ownership stake goes from 100% down to 77%. Now, if you were to do and something important to note is that your ownership stake is now worth $5 million in the company. So now when you go to do your Series A, the math gets a little bit trickier because you're taking dilution in the Series A round on top of the existing dilution that you've already experienced in your seed round. So you have in this case, you're raising an $8 million round on a $32 million pre-money valuation. That means that the post-money valuation, again, is going to be the sum of those two, which is 40 million. And in this case, that means that the Series A investor is going to own $8 million out of $40 million post-money. And that means that you're getting diluted another 20%. So that's an additional 20%. So the way the math works is that you had, before the Series A, owned 77% of your company. You just got diluted another 20%. So now you only own 61.5% of your company. Now, it's worth a bunch of money, $24 million. That's great. Here's where kind of the tricky aspect of this comes into play. So again, this is kind of the summary. You go from 100% ownership down to 77 after the seed round. And then after Series A, you're down to 61.5%. The tricky part comes into play when we're talking about your ownership or how much your ownership stake is worth after the first round, and how that could be deceiving when it comes to the downstream effects of the dilution that you take on in that first round and how that affects your ownership later on. So again, this is a different scenario here. We're saying that instead of raising $1.5 million, we're raising $1 million in this case. And similar to, if we go back for a second, to the scenario X, we said $1.5 million on a $5 million pre-money valuation. Series Y, we're saying $1 million on a $5 million pre-money valuation. So you're taking on less dilution. And interestingly here, you're going from 100% down to 83%. So you got diluted by 17%. Your equity is still worth $5 million in this case. So you may be thinking, okay, what's the difference between scenario X and scenario Y? I don't care about percentages. I just care about how much money my company is worth to me, my ownership portion. It matters because when we're talking about dilution and ownership percentage, that will matter for the next fundraising round. So again, this is the seed round. Now, when we're looking at the Series A round for scenario Y, we're saying that, again, you're getting diluted by an additional 20% here. So same parameters as scenario X. And we're saying $8 million round size, $32 million pre-money valuation. Your ownership percentage is going to get reduced from 83% down to 66.5%. So if you'll notice, the stake, your ownership stake, is now worth 26.5 million instead of the 24 million. So again, scenario Y, we're taking a lower amount of dilution in the seed round because we're not taking in as much money in that round. We're only raising $1 million in that round, and that leads to less dilution for you as the founder and a higher ownership percentage after both the seed round and the Series A. So the comparison between the two, after seed, in both scenarios, scenario X and scenario Y, your stake is worth 5 million. After Series A, even though you have the same additional dilution, that additional 20% dilution, you have a very different outcome, right? Your stake in scenario X, where you raised 1.5 million in your seed round, ends up being, after Series A, worth 24.5 million, but your stake in scenario Y is actually worth $2 million more. So again, dilution is tricky. After seed round, you may be thinking, well, my stake is worth $5 million. If everything is the same after that, how could they possibly be different? That's because you took on greater dilution in scenario Y, or in scenario X rather. So again, these are kind of the dilution percentages that you can expect and how your ownership percentage is going to decrease over time as you raise money. In a seed round, you typically can expect 20% dilution, which means you'll own 80% of the company after the seed round. Series A, you can expect another 20% dilution on average. So typically after both a seed and Series A, you can expect to own a little bit under a third, 2/3 of the company. The takeaways here: dilution matters. Just because your ownership stake is worth $5 million in both scenarios after the seed round doesn't mean that doesn't have downstream effects to it. Another important one is don't raise more money than you need. You see that kind of shake out in the decrease in ownership percentage and how that affects you down the road. So then that brings up the question, how do you know how much money you need to raise? That is something that we'll address later on when it comes to projections. Okay, safes. Safes are a simple agreement for future equity. And what does that mean? This is a term or a financial instrument coined by Y Combinator. It means that you get money now in exchange for giving the investor a promise of future shares or equity in your company. And the reason that Y Combinator created this, and they call it a post-money safe, is because it's much easier to do and use a safe instead of having to agree on the valuation of your company in a priced round. So oftentimes for very early stage companies, it's kind of hard to know how much the company is valued, what the valuation should be. And so instead of coming up with one in order to get money from investors, you can kind of defer that into the future and say, okay, we don't know exactly what our valuation should be right now, but give us money now and we promise we'll give you shares later. Now, the kind of mechanism that makes this work for investors and makes them okay with this arrangement is something called the valuation cap, which means that no matter how much better or the extent to which your valuation improves from the safe round to the next round, the investor, the safe holder, the one that gives you the money up front in exchange for future shares, they want kind of this guarantee to say, hey, no matter what, I want at least 5% of your company, and I'm going to give you X thousands of dollars up front. So the way that works is that the safe holder gets the higher of the number of shares when applying this valuation cap. You could think of it as an upper limit on the valuation of the company, or they would get in the rare case where the valuation cap is actually higher than the priced round valuation of the next round, the safe holder would be able to choose getting that better deal on converting their investment into your company into the number of shares. And we'll take a look at the math in a second. This is what you can expect. This is information from Carta, which is a cap table platform. For priced rounds and safe seeds in 2023, typically you get a valuation cap of $12.5 million, $15 million. And that is on an average of either $600,000 raised or $1.3 million raised. So what does that mean? That means that if you're doing a safe, again, simple agreement for future equity, the investor gives you, in this first case, $625,000 upfront, and the valuation cap that is set on the safe is $12.5 million. Another option is to skip the safe altogether and do a priced round if you can feel comfortable putting a valuation on your company and the investor agrees to it. The average for priced rounds in 2023 so far, at least on Carta's platform, is a $13 million valuation and a $3.2 million raised. So those are what you can expect between the two. Also, in the tool I built, there is a safe conversion impact calculator, so you can see how those conversions will affect your ownership percentage. So in this case, we're going to use two examples. It's pretty typical for companies to raise multiple safes with different investors. So for the purposes of this example, we're going to use the same numbers to keep it simple. So in this case, each safe has the investment amount, the amount of money that the investor is giving you up front, and a valuation cap. And so what this means is, like we learned before, pre-money valuation plus the amount raised equals the post-money valuation. So you can see here, $600,000 for each of these safes is what the investor is giving you. You divide that by a post-money valuation cap of $12 million. And that means that the safe holder is going to get 5% of your company once you have a priced round. So they don't own equity in your company just yet. They've given you money, but their ownership comes into play when you actually have a priced round. So when you have a round that has a valuation associated with it. So in this case, we're not looking at the Series A priced round just yet. We're just looking at the safe conversion. So in this scenario, if you have 1,000 shares in the company as the founder and you have no outside investment yet, you take on two safes. You have one safe with investor A, one safe with investor B. Each of those safes entitle the safe holder to 5% of your company in the future. So when that conversion happens, when you raise the priced round, those get converted, and now each of those investors owns equity in your company. But how that kind of all shakes out depends on the Series A valuation as well. So in this case, if you'll notice, let's back up a couple slides. There is something called pro rata rights. We're not going to get into it too much. It basically just means that the safe holder is entitled to invest in the Series A at the same share price as the Series A investors. So it's kind of separate from their SAFE conversion, but kind of the mechanism here is that they're able to maintain the initial ownership percentage that they were targeting, because the Series A investors dilute all of the other previous investors. So again, we're going from owning 100% of the company down to owning 90% of the company. And then each of those investors owns 5%. We have the Series A coming in. Let's say we're raising a nice sized round, $10 million. And let's say that the pre-money valuation that we're raising is $50 million. So what does that mean? The post-money valuation is going to be that $10 million plus $50 million for $60 million post-money valuation. Now, in this case, because we said that the SAFE holders, investor A and investor B, get pro rata rights, they get actually each 5% of this round. So investor A is going to be able to get, it is going to be able to invest of this $10 million round, 500,000, and investor B is also going to be able to invest 500,000 at the Series A share price. So they got a better deal on their SAFE conversion. But in this case, they also want to and choose to participate and exercise their pro rata rights for the Series A. So what does that mean? If the round in total is $10 million and investor A takes up 500 grand of that, investor B takes up 500 grand, the new investor, investor C, that's investing in the Series A, only gets to invest $9 million. And so their ownership is going to be the $9 million investment divided by that $60 million post-money valuation, which ends up being 15%. So as you can see here, after the SAFE conversion, but before the Series A, this is what the cap table looked like on the left side. Founder owns 90%, investor A and investor B each own 56 shares each for 5% each. After Series A, because they exercised their pro rata rights, investor A now owns more shares than they did. And that's to maintain their 5% ownership each in your company. And then investor C owns the 15% that they invested into your company, that $9 million. Okay, so this is kind of what it all looks like before the SAFE. You owned 100% of your company. After Series A, you only own 75%. Okay. A lot of folks and investors that you'll deal with will say, okay, a SAFE is a simple agreement for future equity. These are standard terms. There shouldn't be any negotiation. It should be simple. You should talk to a good lawyer first before you agree to that. There are some clauses in there that you may want to add as it relates to liquidation preference and other kind of dilutive mechanisms that are that exist in these agreements. So don't just accept the standard terms there. And then again, you don't want to raise too much money, as we saw in the previous examples with scenario X and scenario Y. Taking in more money in terms of the dollars in your bank account dilute your ownership percentage, and that means that down the road, if you have an exit event, it's not going to be as fruitful. Of course, again, that brings up the question, how do you know how much you need to raise? And that brings us to projections. So the whole reason why we do financial projections and why I built the tool FlowCog Canvas is to help with these exact scenarios, right? You don't want to take on unnecessary dilution if you don't have to. And projections will help you understand how much money you actually need to raise in order to make your hires, to buy your inventory, to run your business, right? It also helps you avoid leaving money on the table if you think that you're going to be growing faster than your potential investors think you're going to be growing. You can show them your projections and say, hey, I know we've grown X%, but we think we're going to grow Y% in the future. Therefore, we think we deserve a higher valuation. And that will lead to less dilution. And then, of course, just for running your business, you don't want to be flying blind. You want to understand what your cash situation looks like, both in the present and in the future. Which brings us to cash runway. This notion of how many months of cash do you have remaining until you run out of it and you have to shut down the business. Most calculations floating around out there for cash runway, they simply take however much cash you have today in the bank. Let's say in this example, $10 million. And they say, okay, how much money are we burning each month? How much money are you spending? What's the net cash outflow each month? They'll look at the most recent month and say, well, we thought, we can see that we burned $1 million in cash. And that means that if you take 10 million divided by 1, you'll get 10 months of cash remaining. Seems simple, straightforward. It's totally wrong. Don't do this. This is a terrible idea to calculate cash runway like this. The problem with it is that it assumes that you'll have a stable burn rate each month. So there is a good chance that in reality, that $1 million of net cash outflow each month, $1 million of net loss and cash leaving your bank account is going to increase. You're going to make more hires. You're going to spend more on software tools, on marketing spend. So you can't rely on that number being a good assumption for the future. Ideally, you want greater than 12 months of cash runway. That should say greater than, not less than. And that's because you need to be able to plan for the future in terms of your future fundraising rounds, or if you need to make other adjustments, if you need to have layoffs for your company or cut down on different types of spend. So the right way to do calculate cash runway and to kind of think strategically about when the next time you're going to need to raise money is, or how or to what extent you'll need to cut expenses in order to keep the company afloat. You want to do actual projections for this. And so the idea is then you'll be able to see and chart out your future cash balance, and you'll be able to see when it gets too low, to a dangerously low number. Again, that's typically, 6 months is the mark that is the kind of danger zone there, just because then you start to introduce more risk in terms of unexpected cash events happening to the business. And the idea here is that when you do projections, it helps you understand, okay, what do we need to change about the business? If it's not another fundraising round, do we need to figure out a way to get more revenue or cut expenses in order to be where we want to be? Typically, the questions that projections help you answer: can you afford that new hire? How much runway do you have remaining? When do you need to raise money again? So those are all of the slides that I have. Let's jump into what how to actually do projections properly. And this is going to be a much kind of shorter setup for going through projections. In general, you want to be pretty thoughtful about kind of the different aspects that go into it from the revenue and expense standpoint. In this case, we're going to use my tool Flowcog Canvas to see if we can put together something quickly and give you an idea of kind of how you should be thinking about this. So let me share my screen. Okay, so this is the tool Flowcog Canvas. And like we said, the goal of this is to make sense of our business, figure out where we stand in the present, and then what our trajectory, our growth trajectory looks like into the future. So let's, here you can kind of add different scenarios. Let's name this Lunch and Learn. We want to, let's say that we have a current cash balance of $50,000. And let's say that we are a SaaS company. There are some templates here that you can drag and drop onto the canvas to start building our projections. but let's stick to some of these basic blocks first. Let's say that we have recurring revenue here. And let's say that the monthly recurring revenue that we have is $5,000. Of course, you can add new line items to these, what I call blocks. These are drag and drop blocks onto the canvas. Let's say that the revenue stream here is going to grow at a 100% growth rate, starts off at 5,000. That means it's going to be 10,000 a year from now. And this is what it'll look like into the future. Flowcog Canvas always projects out the next 3 years. If you're early on enough, you're probably not going to use anything more than the first 12, 18, 24 months, but it's there if you just kind of want to get a sense of what that out year looks like. Let's add to it the some payroll. Let's say that we have some payroll costs. Maybe you have to hire a programmer as the lead engineer for your product. Let's say that you have to pay them 10 grand a month. And let's say that you'll be hiring another one starting at the beginning of next year. So January 1st, you'll have another $10,000 per month expense. Let's see what this looks like. So at first, for the next few months, rest of 2023, 10 grand, then it goes up to 20 grand starting in 2024. So let's add one more. Let's say it's marketing expense, and let's go with $3,000, and let's say 50%. Let's say it starts in January of 2024. So you can see this starting to take shape. We go to the outcomes section and we see, okay, if we have $50,000 in the bank, we're spending quite a bit of money each month. That's the kind of red portion of the revenue and cost break even chart down here. And you can see that you actually go negative in your cash balance in February 2024. Now, you shouldn't wait until January 2024 to address those issues. We're sitting here looking at this cash balance projection in August of 2023. So we still have some time to do something about it. Let's add some fundraising to the equation. So right now we have $50,000 in the bank. Let's say that we do a raise in March of 2024 for $200,000. How does that change the cash balance? So we still have 6 months of runway. We don't quite get there. Let's add in another one on December 1st. Let's say we raise in 2023, let's say we raise another 50 grand to hold us over, maybe a friends and family round, maybe on a safe. So you do now have just enough money. Again, this is flying a little bit close to the sun, depending on the size of your company and how much payroll you have and everything. Having $30,000 in the bank is you want a little bit more cushion than that. In this example, though, overall, you don't actually go below zero in your cash balance projections. So you do have 36 months of runway here. Again, you can kind of see that you don't actually break even until sometime in 2025. So you're burning money that whole time. Your cash balance is going down. The spikes that you see are the fundraising events. You can also see here how this kind of how the money is moving through your business. So where you're getting the money from in terms of your revenue and how you have to pay it out over time. So those are going to look a lot different, 1 month from now versus 36 months down the road when you're actually profitable. The tool also produces a P&L for you, so you can actually see what your profit and loss statement would look like in the future, given the assumptions that you've entered into the tool. Again, this is not going to be perfect. No one has a crystal ball. It's not possible to get this exact, but you want to paint the picture for yourself to be able to make these decisions and say, hey, we need to raise money at some point. Is that 6 months from now? Is that 1 year from now? You use a tool like this to help you kind of corroborate your gut instinct around that. you can also say, okay, can we get better with this? Let's say that we want to add in another scenario and try to make it so that we can break even a little bit earlier. So let's say scenario 2, similar, it's a duplicate of the lunch and learn scenario that we just built. And let's say this is with extra recurring revenue. And let's go back to our canvas and let's add in another recurring revenue line item. Let's duplicate this one and say it'll start in January of 2024. Maybe it has slightly less growth than the first recurring revenue stream. So now when we go here, you can see this kind of knee in the curve where starting January of 2024, you have that nice bump in revenue. So what does that do for our cash balance projection and our break even? You'll see the break even comes in a lot sooner, and the money that you're burning each month is lower. So the cash balance doesn't dip as low in this scenario as the first one. So if you go back to the original scenario, this is what the cash balance looks like. It gets pretty low in December of 2025, and you have these bigger losses up until then. With the new scenario, with that extra recurring revenue stream, you're not burning as much money along the way, and your cash balance doesn't dip as low. So again, that's kind of the quick rundown of how to approach financial projections and why that's a meaningful exercise for you to go through, both before you raise money and after. Of course, you don't want to take on too much dilution, and so you don't want to raise too much money more than you need. So using a tool like this, doesn't have to be my tool. It could be anything, it could be an Excel sheet. Using a tool to help you with those projections is going to help you prevent taking on too much dilution, and it's going to help you think more strategically about your cash position. So that's actually all the material I had. Happy to take some questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Adam. I think we did have one question in the chat so far. What are you giving for the money? What percentage are you giving? Ralph,
So
you want to
let's
clarify? Unless you already understand, Adam.
let me see. I know that Ralph had asked that question earlier on in the presentation.
Hello.
Hi there.
I was trying to figure out just what you were giving up in those first scenarios to the investors, what percentages they were getting.
Are you referring to the to scenario X and
Yes.
scenario Y?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So in scenario X in the seed round, we're giving up 23% to the investor. So we're going from before the seed round, you own 100% of your company. And in order to get $1.5 million, you agreed to part with 23% of your company. So now you only own 77%. So that is a pretty significant portion of equity that you're giving up there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Now, when you go to Series A, the 20%, is that coming from the two of us now? The person,
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you look at the kind of, let's see if I can. So you can think of the 77% as your starting point for Series A, but when you are taking on additional funding, there are new shares being added to your cap table, and that dilutes everyone else proportionally. And so what that means is 77% times 80%, which is 1 minus the 20%, that gets you down to 61.5%. So before Series A, you owned 77% of your company. You took on an additional 20% of dilution, which diluted you down from 77% ownership to 61%.
Right. You gave up 16% essentially.
16 percentage points. Yeah, exactly. So you gave up 20% of your 77%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I understand now. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Adam, I learned a ton, I'll tell you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If people have questions, is there a way they can contact you? Any
Yeah,
questions
sure.
you have? Okay.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a long last name, or you can email me at adam@flowcog.com, FLOWCOG.com. And I believe Chandler will be sending around the presentation slides to everyone after this as well.
Yes,
So.
I will. So, and feel free to email me cfific@ybi.org with any other questions that I can help you with. And I just want to thank you again, Adam. That was great. So, I
Adam?
appreciate you taking the time.
Speaking of your last name, we have a family in Camel with the same last name. Do you have any relatives in this part of the country?
I do. Yeah, we have a big family in Ohio. So
George Zagornis was an attorney here.
yeah.
And he's a little bit older than me now. And he gave me my first management job when he owned a bunch of Arthur Treachers in the area.
Fish and chips, classic.
Right. Small world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll be following up with an email.
Great. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.